Welcome to the podcast for the world builders, where we dive into the spells and strategies for Black feminist world building and creative actualization. These weekly podcasts and newsletters are presented by Cedar School, where all this theory that we get into inside of the podcast meets practice. Now, if you've had the recurring desire to generate recurring revenue that resources your creative practice, then before we get started, I just want to invite you to download Cedar School's Creative Offer Questionnaire to Oneself. It's a worksheet and it will help you get clarity on the creative offer on your heart. And it even features Audre Lorde's quotes around like transforming our silence into language and action. And you can cut out these little quotes and tape it to your journal, your mirror, your studio wall, wherever you want these reminders of our Lord. So the link to download the questionnaire can be found in the show notes. So feel free to head there and grab that. But I feel like I alluded to this in the previous episode. I'm just going to say it again. I kind of start every episode, every podcast episode with absolute humility because I still can't believe I get to do this with you. Right? I'm so honored to be learning and practicing alongside you today and always. And if this is your first episode, thank you for tuning in. And if you are returning, thank you for coming back, my friend. If you are returning, then you know what's about to happen, right? We are going to ground in our sensorium and give ourselves permission to breathe into the present moment, right? We're going to just take a quick beat to become aware of our surroundings and to get curious about what's happening in our sensorium, what's happening in our environment, what's happening inside of our bodies, right? So I'm going to take 3 deep, full belly breaths, lengthening my exhales, and I'm going to invite you to do the same if that feels possible in this moment. All right, y'all, let's begin. Okay. So, as we come back to each other, let's note one thing in our sensorium, right? Something that maybe you can see, touch, taste, smell, hear, something you can feel beyond the senses we even have language for. So I check in and like, what can I sense in this moment? In that little pocket of silence, I noticed my feet were a little cold, even though I have on my slippers. They're still, it's that time of year. It's a dreary day here, outside of DC. The sky's a little gray. I can smell my perfume. I can taste the matcha green tea on my tongue, and I can see my little lip print on my mug here, which is kind of cute if you're watching. So all of that is happening in my sensorium right now. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can also kind of see what a glimpse of what my study looks like. But what can you sense in this present moment? Now, let's check in on our mood and intention right now in this very moment. Personal mood for me, I feel like I am feeling this Mars retrograde and all the lessons that it's carrying before it even happened, right? I'm recording this before Mars even started retrograde, and I feel like I'm already being like pulled with it or something. It could be also the change in season, the change in weather, right? My body is slowing me down and inviting me to look in corners and under covers of my cells that I thought I tended to. And this week has been like, nope, no, Sit your ass down, baby girl, because you missed the spot. Right. And it's not punishing energy. It's just it's invitation energy. Um, and some of y'all might resonate with that, right? And others may be like, what is this child talking about? But anyway, what is your mood? I'm curious. How are you arriving? Right? Can we give ourselves another 3 seconds to feel into what we feel without judging it? Even if we, even if we decide to judge ourselves for the rest of the day, I don't recommend it. But even if we decide to do that for the rest of the day, that's the choice we make. I want to invite us to make a different choice right now and to let's just drop into our mood and to feel what we feel without judgment. Let's pause and check in there. Now we move to intention, right? And this is kind of like the last segment or cycle of our check-in, right? Because we do nothing without intention. So what's my intention? My intention is to invite us to explore how we can cultivate safety, trust, and belonging inside the desires of our truest selves, right? It always comes back, I find, it always comes back to cultivating safety, trust, and belonging, right? Inside of who we desire to be, what our desires are, who we are becoming, right? Especially as we begin to walk away from the selves we invented out of fear, out of survival, or the selves we invented in accordance with capitalism's vision for our lives. Right? That's what we'll be exploring in this episode, and that's the intention I'm holding while recording it. Now, what's your intention behind listening to this episode? Right. What drew you to it? What do you, or maybe if you're multitasking, check in. What is my intention for doing what it is I'm doing? I'm going to pause here and let you reflect on that. All right. So now let's get into today's episode. Checked in, a little bit more grounded maybe than we were, hopefully, before we press play. Maybe we are. That's my hope, right? Let's get into episode 64, Becoming Your First Client, the grief work of composting past selves and desires. And y'all, I almost named this episode When Feasting on External Validation, like, or when you've been feasting on external validation for so long, and it's left you hungry. Right? And maybe you can relate to this feeling, right, of just feasting on external validation, of like all of the external rewards and gold stars. And you're kind of like, oh, wow, this is like there's no nourishment here. And you're left still hungry, still like craving fullness or desiring fullness, right? So let's start with story time, as we do. Before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. Is a quote I was introduced to via Keningzu's newsletter, and I'll link their website in the show notes so you can sign up for their newsletter or her newsletter. But the quote struck me so directly when I read it, and it resonated so deeply during the season in which I read it. This was before the election, I believe. And it struck me so deeply and resonated so deeply because I am in a season of my business and my life where everything is actually working, y'all. Or let me put it like this, where things actually feel good, right? Because things can be working and still kind of like not feel good, right? So things feel good in my practice right now. Like the work is flowing through my hands with ease because I am letting it. I'm not bracing myself for a fire to put out, right? And it doesn't mean that there aren't fires, right? I'm just no longer bracing, clenching, anticipating, right? I'm not waiting for there to be some punishment or negative consequence for my audacity. I'm not holding my breath, suspecting the other shoe to drop, right? I'm not inventing busy work or projects to distract myself from my pain. I'm not exhausting myself so I don't have to feel anything. I'm resting inside the day-to-day work, my day-to-day responsibilities, right? My day-to-day breath. I'm letting it be enough. I am chopping wood and carrying water. And this gratitude, right? This presence, this contentment is actually more than enough, right? It is more than I even knew to ask for, more than I even knew was available. But y'all, it wasn't always like this. And if I'm being absolutely honest, I've never been here before. This depth of presence, like this depth of felt somatic groundedness and presence is new. Somatic sturdiness is new, right? And if I can be honest again, this like true absence of worry is unsettling. The absence of constantly striving is sometimes uncomfortable. I can admit that, right? And there's this paradox here, like paradoxically, stillness, acceptance, contentment, and being a sturdy steward of our ease requires or can require real effort from us, right? The stillness can actually be the thing that requires work. I remember when Lauryn Hill said, it could all be so simple, right? But we rather make it hard. And sometimes it's not us consciously making it hard, right? I don't think that we're signing up for unnecessary suffering on purpose. I know I didn't. I don't remember getting a clipboard and signing up for it. Right? Sometimes we sign up for it. Sometimes we take the clipboard and like, I want this smoke. And then sometimes it's like, no. Most of the time, I think it's our subconscious making decisions from a place of unaddressed trauma and fear that insists on making it hard. Right? This ease that I'm experiencing wasn't easy. In childhood, I developed a habit of constantly scanning my surroundings for threat. I wrote about this in a recent newsletter titled, You Will Not Be Punished for Your Desire. So feel free to check that out after you listen to this episode. But I had to be hyper aware of everything in childhood, the tone, mood, eyes, and overall disposition of the adults around me, caregivers and teachers alike. And this hypervigilance became key to my survival. This hypervigilance is often a response that my body still can act out, even in adulthood, right? They can act out what I learned in childhood, right? Where I learned curiosity, questioning authority, and having the audacity to want a damn thing outside of what was offered would result in punishment, right? These are kind of like learned behaviors from childhood. Connecting curiosity, questions, and audacity with punishment. I learned that disappearing unwavering unwavering obedience, right? And figuring out how to contort every limb of my need into the smallest spaces imaginable. I learned that that was rewarded with kind eyes and a perceived freedom of movement, right? Away from my room, away from the house, away from the belt. Can we talk about it, y'all? If you grew up in a spare the rod, spoil the child household like I did, I am holding you close. I am recording this for us. I am doing this for us. In adulthood, that simple equation right? That desire equaled punishment and obedience equaled reward, manifested into this or into a series of subconscious decision-making patterns still rooted, right, in making my parents proud. My accomplishments a salve for the unmet childhood needs of their own, right? You get to a point where you start making decisions in an effort to try to heal them, right? Their sacrifice has to mean something. Their sacrifice had to mean something in my brain as it was still developing through childhood and early adulthood, right? So I chose the path of tech and software engineering out of creative curiosity, yes, on some level, right? But on another level, if I'm being real, I also chose it because it would perhaps make their sacrifice mean something. It was impressive. It was something they could brag about on Facebook, and my inner child connected being impressive with worthiness. She connected being small with lovability. She connected following orders with freedom from punishment. She connected suppressing desire with survival. Get this though. It was my creative practice that required I make new connections. Inside the erotic as power, these fear-based connections couldn't hold. My creative practice prompted me to ask, who are you without the constant striving? Number one. Number two, where will you get your food if it's not at the table of external validation? What truly nourishes you, beloved? Number three, will you allow yourself to believe dreams for your life that aren't rooted in capitalist values and colonial order are safe to desire? This is what my creative practice is prompting me to ask. You don't even have to act on it first. You don't even have to act on your desires first. Will you just do the step of allowing you to believe that your desires are accessible to you, that they belong to you, that they are safe to think about, to want, to long for, right? And I couldn't anticipate the ways my creative practice would not only heal my inner child, but also allow me to do the grief work of composting the past selves and desires and behaviors that I had cultivated rooted in fear. And I couldn't anticipate this, y'all. I couldn't anticipate the ways my creative practice would invite me to write a new story, a new self, a new character, a new world animated by love until I released this desire to control every outcome, right, out of this really surface level craving for safety. Perhaps, y'all, perhaps the hardest part of grieving past selves is grieving the goals, right, that might have been our driving force, might have been the pull that got us out of bed in the morning. Speaking from experience here. When so much of our identity is entangled in achievement for so long, grieving goals can be the most destabilizing work of all. We let these goals go, if we let this sense of control go, what happens? That is a level of wildness that we may be deeply unfamiliar with, a level of indeterminacy and uncertainty that may make us highly, highly uncomfortable. It could be destabilizing to shift the entire narratives that it shift entire narratives that we may have been carrying for decades, right? In my 20s, I wanted the cover of Fast Capitalism. I wanted Forbes 30 under 30, right? I wanted the startup and the venture capitalists or the venture capital investments, right? I saw folks my age getting all of that and I wanted a piece. Later in my mid 20s, right? I wanted nothing more than to be the Black darling of the art world. And I was willing to use all the buzzwords of the moment, right? In any and every grant application to secure that position. Then in my late 20s, I fantasized about being the Black woman unicorn of the tech industry, right? Promoting diversity and inclusion. I dreamed of keynotes at tech conferences and my invisible cape catching the rare air and the wind while on TED stages. Okay, y'all, are you seeing a pattern? My Chiron is in Leo, if in case you couldn't tell, in case you didn't notice. But for most of my 20s, I was fueled and teens, right? I was fueled and middle school, right? I was fueled by external validation and these kind of like external looking for these kind of like external affirmations of my worthiness to take up space. Right now, I no longer dream of being palatable. I no longer dream of being, um, you know, I was going to say pop cultural, but that's not the word. I no longer want who I am to be an easy pill to swallow. I no longer want who my desires to be um like manifest in these like hyper commercial ways that oftentimes can yield, right, the external validation that we're looking for. I no longer dream of being palatable, simply put. I dream of burning tongues, okay, and trusting the divine timing of my work to reach exactly who it is supposed to reach, exactly how it is supposed to reach them. And if I have any desire, it is that to show up, do my work, get paid for it, and go home. It's just that simple now. And I want to be clear. I want to be very, very clear. Going from limitless ambition to quiet contentment doesn't necessarily mean I don't still desire opportunities. It doesn't mean that I don't still have goals. It doesn't mean I still don't want certain things, right? I allow myself to want the New York Times bestseller list. I allow myself to want that. But the energy has shifted from striving to allowing, right? From persevering to releasing, to forcing and clawing to flowing, right? From controlling every detail to surrendering every outcome. If I don't make that list, I still will be okay, right? It's that shift in energy. And again, I used to thrive off external validation, jumping from one impressive thing to the next, racking up the gold stars. Now I'm on a journey that is much more quiet, more still, much more like chopping wood and carrying water. And most of the time, it's quite boring, except for those moments on my morning walks through the forest where the wind picks up, carrying birdsong leaves falling down like poetic lessons, and the sun kisses my cheek just so. It is like in these moments, the drama of the present unfolds, as does my capacity to breathe into it. And it is in these moments I couldn't be more impressed with myself. right? It is in these moments I can release any desire to impress others as a quote unquote currency for connection. And I need to shout out my coach, Des Davis, for the language of currency for connection, right? It is inside capitalism, inside constant striving, inside clout, misaligned ambition, a craving to impress and external validation. It's inside all these things that they can, so that getting them or having them um, being impressive can serve as this currency for connection, right? Where clout can serve as this like illusion of social safety. And this is where we loop back to the beginning of the episode. Shape shifting into whoever those in power need us to be might have been a necessary strategy in childhood, but we're not there anymore. Yeah, I'm going to say this one more time because this is like the core of this episode. If you take nothing away, I want you to take this away. Shape shifting into whoever, right? Shape shifting into whoever those in power need us to be might have been a necessary strategy in childhood, but y'all, we're not there anymore. It is safe in this present moment to let that survival strategy go. Right? We inside we may remember being grown actually has nothing to do, right, with what we can acquire materially. Being grown might have everything to do with knowing who we are and the lengths we will go to be them, become them, honor them, share them. And in that work, right, in that work of becoming our first client, a mirror of our own desire, we give ourselves permission to honor the most authentic version of ourselves and inspire others to possibly carve out, right, an authentic self in this collective journey of existence, right? By becoming our first client, we then become a mirror of desire for others. In moments like these, y'all, in moments like these where the smell of rubber and tar and the ash of unspeakable violence become more pronounced, I turn to June Jordan, who once wrote, I am not wrong. Wrong is not my name. My name is my own, my own, my own. And I can't tell you who the hell set things up like this, but I can tell you that from now on, my resistance, my simple and daily and nightly self-determination may very well cost you your life. Ah, that's June Jordan from Poem About My Rights. And that poem is Directed by Desire, the collected poems of June Jordan. But there are a million ways, right, to interpret these lines. And every time I read them, I come to a different conclusion. Today's interpretation makes me aware of all the ways my simple and daily and nightly self-determination has cost me my old lives. Today, I remember that sometimes our physical bodies have to die for freedom and sometimes they don't. Today, I remember freedom is something I can give myself to. Freedom is something I can, what do I want to say? Give myself permission to become at any time. All right, y'all. So we are moving into the invitation portion of this podcast episode, right? This week, I want to invite you to be your own Client first. How do we do that? Number one, we grieve old versions of selves and desires that we may have invented out of fear. Only you know what these and who these self, what these desires are and who these selves are, right? I can do a lot of things, but I cannot know that for you. Only you know that. So number one, we're going to grieve old versions of selves and desires that we may have invented out of fear. Number two, we're going to learn to trust the wilder, passionate, audacious, curious, creative versions of ourselves that wants to take up more space than we could have ever imagined being safe or possible. Number three, we're going to trust and follow our curiosity. We're going to trust and follow our desire. We're going to trust and follow our disobedience. We're going to trust and follow our unruliness. We're going to trust and follow our ungovernability. We're going to trust and follow our intuition. We're going to trust and follow our becoming. Right? We can journal about all of this and then congratulate ourselves on being grown, right? An embodiment of the desire for freedom. Oftentimes, the first step is to just allow ourselves to think about these things, allow ourselves to name these things on paper, allow ourselves to write these things down and reflect on them and sit with them right in front of us. Right in front of us, just like let's sit with them, let's face them. Because a lot of us want to offer retreats or some sort of creative healing container, but perhaps we haven't even used the tools on ourselves that we are desiring to share with others. So let's become our own clients first, right? What sense of belonging inside of that journey, what sense of belonging gets to be facilitated on the other side of you being your first client and then fully showing up as your authentic self to serve others, right? We get to face that and ask, do we have the courage to compost the codependent commitment to using overworking and overachieving as what Des Davis calls a currency for connection? Right? We get to ask ourselves questions like, will we compassionately release the past selves that need to bring themselves to like the edge of their capacity to feel safe, secure, or worthy inside relationship and community? We get to ask questions like, will we abandon capitalism's vision for our lives? I hope we will. That's the invitation, right? Will we let the vision for our lives rooted in creative refusal be enough? I hope so. Right? This is the energy that we are calling in and conjuring inside this episode. And before enlightenment, what do? We chop wood, carry water, and after becoming our first client, what do? We chop wood and carry water. Right? There is a sturdiness. There is a somatic sturdiness that can be accessed in cultivating visions in alignment with our authentic selves. Selves rooted in love instead of fear. So this week, we'll practice simple and daily and nightly self-determination by gathering our tools and becoming our first client. I want to invite you to come back next week where we'll talk about disrupting perfectionism by pulling it up at the root. Until then, thank you for tuning into another episode of the podcast for the World Builders, where we dive into the spells and strategies for Black feminist world building while exploring how offering the skills, wisdom, and while exploring how offering the skills and wisdom, I should say, from our journey of transformation might seed, resource, and deepen creative practices rooted in collective liberation. I firmly believe, y'all, we all came into this world creative and we all came into this world with something to offer. I firmly believe deep down that we all want to orient around and inside of politics of love instead of politics of fear. And these are the beliefs we try to honor inside of Cita School. So again, before we go, I'm going to invite you to download the Creative Offer Questionnaire to Oneself to reflect on what your offering to us may be, right? What offering might you becoming your first client inspire? As always, this podcast will forever be free, but, but, the best way to support the podcast is by sharing it with a friend or taking a screenshot or a screen recording of the episode and sharing it on social media so other world builders can find us, because you will never, and I mean never, see a Cita School ad while scrolling the metaverse. So I am putting my faith in you and the work instead. Cita School deeply relies on word of mouth to keep the lights on. So tell a friend to tell a friend if you want to keep these episodes coming. And I heard rating and leaving a review helps too. And the second best way to support is by becoming a paid subscriber to the Cita School Substack at $5 a month. But only and if only, right, you have the financial capacity to do so. Until next week, y'all. So be it, see to it. Breathe through it.